To talk more about Syria, I'm joined in the studio with France 24's James Andre. Now, James, you covered the beginning of the Battle of Raqqa last July. I mean, the Islamic State group has emerged as the most powerful jihadist group there. They controlled a large part of the city of Raqqa, and you also covered the liberation of the city of Raqqa. What did you see?
Well, basically what we did see was the Islamic State group having dug itself in. When we arrived in Raqqa, this was in June last year, 2017, with Maysa Awad. What we saw was the beginning of this battle, which was basically a sniper fight inside the city with Islamic State group shooters who were hidden in buildings, and basically the Kurds trying to advance. They were advancing at night for the most part, and indeed they were backed by the international coalition, who was indeed attacking with airstrikes. This is many buildings were destroyed in Raqqa during this fight, but it was a very violent fight. The civilians had mostly, for the most part, fled the city, but the ones who were inside central Raqqa, which was very much Islamic State's stronghold in Syria, they controlled up to a third of the actual country, and they controlled the city of Raqqa for 4 years. And what they had done was they dug themselves in. They'd created a network of tunnels underneath the city. They'd also put sandbags in the streets. Before the battle, they knew that indeed the Syrian Democratic Forces, which are this mostly Kurdish militia, but that was also composed of some Sunni tribesmen, Arab Sunni tribesmen, who were part of this battle, were indeed advancing in the city that was heavily mined, very well protected, where they'd managed to stash food, ammunition. So the Islamic State group was very much ready. So there was aerial bombing was used in an extensive way.
So you were there, you've witnessed this decisive battle to liberate the city, James. You've also been back since then. What's it like now?
Well, I went back in November 2017. Now, the city had been liberated for a few weeks. The city was very much in this state, which is totally destroyed. When I went there, you could only, go inside the city if you were authorized by the Syrian Democratic Forces, simply because it's an extremely dangerous place. There are explosives everywhere. You have piles of rubble. Under these piles of rubble, you have mines and you have dead bodies. There are many civilians were trapped under the rubble, as well as fighters, actually, from both sides. So what you see is a city that is completely and utterly destroyed, where a lot of people have, suffered a loss of family. And actually, we have a report that I'd like to show you. This was part of a longer report that I did back in the day, but it'll give you a good idea of what Raqqa looks like now.
Okay.
Raqqa city centre is dead silent. The stench of decaying bodies and burnt buildings fills the air of what once was Syria's largest city. The coalition's bombing campaign has left no buildings unscathed.
أنا اليوم ابني ماتت عذب قدامي يحترق هذا طلع من تحت الانقاض لك حتى علاج ما عالجه دواء عشان الظلام وين ما نروح قام نشوف ظلام ما قام نشوف رحمة.
The car stops in front of the ruins of a gutted building. This is where Ayat's family was killed. She is hoping to find the bodies of her children.
بعد ما احترق قلبي أشوفه. لساتهم كلهم هون تحت الدمار والسقف. حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل ما حدا طالعهم كلهم تحت الدمار. وين أولادي بدي أشوفهم بين هالدمار؟ منو راح يساعدني ويطالع لي إياهم؟ نجي طالعهم من جوا هالدمار كله نازل عليهم، شلون بدي أنزل أشوفهم؟
Well, James, look, it seems that much of the damage that we saw there was actually caused by coalition airstrikes.
Yes, it was, because as I did explain just before the package, the Islamic State group had 4 years to dig itself in. So they were very well prepared. They had set out the defences very well. The battle lasted for 4 months. And indeed, the Kurdish fighters who were on the ground, or the Syrian Democratic Forces fighters on the ground, they didn't want to lose extensive amounts of fighters. They were liberating what is basically an Arab city and not a Kurdish one. But in any case, in order to advance as quickly as possible and lose as little men as possible. Indeed, the coalition striked many, many times. And this is why the city is in the state it's in. The damage out to the buildings was, of course, linked to airstrikes. But what's very difficult now is that indeed for people coming back to the city, it's a very, very shocking scene. This was a city of about 350,000 people. It is now completely destroyed. There's nothing left standing. I haven't seen any buildings that were not, destroyed or collapsing. And of course, you cannot go inside, as I was telling you. So it's a very, very, frightening scene for people who were there, left, and then came back. We had two people in the car when we filmed this report who were young people who were from Raqqa, moved to Tabqa, which is a nearby city which has not been that damaged, and were coming back for the first time. They were totally shocked. They said, but there's nothing to come back to. This was their reaction. They said, what's left for us is now to emigrate to a foreign country or something, but there's no point in coming back to this place. It will never be rebuilt, which is... It's going to be very, very, very difficult to rebuild Raqqa where it was standing before.
So nothing left of the city, you say, James, and civilians not really knowing what to do, where this can go from here. In terms of the Islamic State group, what's left?
Now, what's left of the Islamic State group, the caliphate basically does not exist anymore. Now, I think we have a map on which I'd like to show you, but the Islamic State has managed to hold on to two small parts they have very limited territorial control in areas where there are no cities. It's basically on the border with Iraq, close to, on the east of the country on one side and the other side of the Euphrates River. The caliphate is dead, but what is not dead is the ideal of the Islamic State, and what is not being destroyed, obviously, are the aspirations of Sunni Arabs in Syria. And this is going to be a very, very big challenge because when the Islamic State rose to power in these areas, it was indeed backed by the desire of the population to have more freedom, to have more say in the political system in the country, because they consider themselves under the control of Bashar al-Assad, who's an Alawite and so a Shiite. That is all intact. The situation right now is that they're going to come back to what it was politically back in 2011. The difference is now the cities have all been destroyed and most people have lost half their families. So the big challenge now is going to be to find a political system for Syria in which Arab Sunnis, who are the majority of the population, are actually taken into consideration, have their say. Otherwise, there will be probably a new Islamic State or a new organization which might very well be even more violent than the Islamic State group was.
OK, James Andre with some analysis as Syria marks its 7th anniversary of civil war today. Thank you.